The mail carrier, a young man named Troy I'd seen on the route for years, stopped at my door one Tuesday afternoon and said something that changed everything. "Ma'am, I don't mean to overstep," he says, holding out a small stack of envelopes, "but I've seen some people going in and out of your place on Thursdays, when you're not home. I thought you should know." I stood there in my doorway holding a dish towel, and I think I smiled at him the way you smile when you're trying to make sense of something your brain hasn't caught up to yet. "On Thursdays," I repeated. "Yes, ma'am. A woman and a man usually. Sometimes just the woman. They use a key." I thanked him. I told him I appreciated it. I closed the door and stood in my hallway for a long moment, looking at the row of hooks where I kept my keys. Thursday was the day I volunteered at the Literacy Center on Maplewood Drive. I'd done it for 11 years, ever since my husband Bernard passed. It got me out of the house. It gave the week a shape. I left at 9, came back around 2. Whoever was visiting my home knew my schedule well enough to work around it. The only person who knew my schedule that precisely was my son. His name is Clifton. Lives about 20 minutes away, and for the past several years, our relationship had settled into something comfortable but thin. Birthday calls, Christmas dinners, the occasional Sunday lunch that he'd cancel more often than not. His wife, Darlene, and I had never been close. She was polite to me the way people are polite to someone they're tolerating. I'd learned not to take it personally, or I'd told myself I had. I sat down at my kitchen table and tried to think clearly. There was, I realized, one other possibility: my spare key. I keep a spare key in a small ceramic pot on the back porch, a blue pot shaped like a rooster that Bernard gave me the first Christmas we were married. I'd told Clifton about it years ago in case of emergencies. I hadn't thought about it since. I went to the back porch. The key was there, but when I picked up the pot, something felt off. I turned it over. The key was inside, yes, but it was sitting differently than I remembered. More toward one edge. I'd always kept it centered, under the drainage hole. It's the kind of small, particular habit that doesn't mean anything until suddenly it does. I put the key back and went inside and tried to think about when things had started feeling strange. It had been subtle. Small things. A drawer in my bedroom that I always keep slightly open. I do it so I can find it in the dark, closed all the way. My reading glasses on the left side of the nightstand instead of the right. A book I was certain I'd left face down on the coffee table, face up, none of it dramatic. All of it easy to explain away as an old woman's slipping memory. I am 71 years old. I have an excellent memory. But I had started to wonder. That wondering had been the worst part. The quiet erosion of confidence in my own mind. Had I moved the drawer? Had I turned the book over? Was I misremembering? I'd started writing little notes to myself, little tests. Things I would tuck into drawers or arrange in a particular way so I could check later. And still I hadn't been certain, because I always left open the possibility that I'd forgotten I'd done it. After the mail carrier's visit, I stopped wondering. I went to my laptop and spent 2 hours looking at small wireless cameras. There were more options than I expected, in more shapes: a smoke detector, a clock, a small cube no bigger than a matchbox. I ordered 2. They arrived Friday. I spent Saturday afternoon watching tutorial videos and learning how to connect them to the app on my phone. My hands shook a little, not from nerves but from the effort of holding the small devices steady while I screwed in the mounts. Bernard always said I had more patience than sense. I think he meant it as a compliment. I placed one in the living room, tucked behind the philodendron I've kept alive for 17 years, angled toward the front door. I placed the second in my bedroom doorway, pointing into the hallway, half hidden by the frame of a watercolor Bernard's mother had painted in the 1960s. I tested them both. The footage was clear. That Sunday, Clifton called. "Mom, I've been meaning to come by," he said. "We should have dinner soon." "I'd love that," I said. "Maybe next week?" "Sure," I said. "You know where I am." I didn't mention the cameras. I didn't mention Troy. I kept my voice the way I always keep it with him, warm, unhurried, careful not to ask too much. Thursday morning, I packed my bag for the Literacy Center, locked the front door, walked to my car, and drove away. 2 blocks from the house, I pulled over and parked on a side street I'd chosen the night before because you can't see it from my block, but I could see the intersection. I sat there with my phone in my lap. The app showed both camera feeds. The living room, still and quiet, morning light coming through the curtains. The hallway, empty, the watercolor painting visible at the edge of the frame. I sat there for an hour and 20 minutes. At 10:17, the front door opened. She came in first, a woman I didn't recognize, late 30s, dark coat, a leather bag over one shoulder. She moved through my living room like she'd been there before, which I now understood she had. She didn't look around the way a stranger would. She walked straight toward the hallway. Then Darlene came in. My daughter-in-law, Clifton's wife. She stopped in the middle of my living room and said something to the other woman that I couldn't hear. They walked into the hallway and disappeared from the first camera's view. They appeared on the second camera. They went into my bedroom. I watched them on the small screen of my phone, parked on a side street 2 blocks from my own home, and I felt something go very quiet inside me. Not shock, exactly. More like recognition. The pieces assembling into a shape I should have been able to see sooner. I watched them for 40 minutes. The other woman sat at my vanity, where I sit every morning, and opened her bag. She took out several things I couldn't identify clearly from the angle. Darlene opened my closet, then my dresser, then the small lockbox I keep on the top shelf where I store documents. It wasn't locked. I'd never locked it because I'd never thought I needed to. I watched her go through it. Then I drove to the literacy center. I taught my class. I came home at my usual time and found the house exactly as I'd left it, or nearly so. The drawer was closed again. A small figurine on the bedroom windowsill had moved 3 inches to the left. That night I watched the full recording twice, then saved it to a separate drive. I didn't call Clifton. I didn't call anyone. I called my neighbor Rosalind instead, a retired paralegal who lives 4 houses down and has been my closest friend since we were both pushing strollers on the same street decades ago. I'd told her about the mail carrier. Now I told her everything else. She listened without interrupting, which is one of the things I've always loved about her. "You need to pull your financial records," she said when I was done. "Everything. Bank statements, credit card, the investment account. Everything going back at least a year." I did. It took most of the weekend, and once I had everything in front of me, spread across my kitchen table in organized stacks the way Bernard used to do at tax time, I found them. Small withdrawals. Always under $500. From my secondary checking account, the one I'd opened when Bernard was sick, because it was easier to manage his medical payments separately, and had just never closed. I used it for automatic payments mostly. Property tax, a magazine subscription, the kind of account you stop watching closely because nothing dramatic ever comes out of it. Over 14 months, just under $8,000 had left that account in transactions I hadn't made. Rosalind came over. She looked at everything. She didn't tell me I was overreacting. She told me I needed to talk to a financial fraud investigator and a family law attorney, not necessarily in that order. "You haven't confronted Clifton," she said. "No. Good. Don't." The hardest part of the next 3 weeks was Thanksgiving. Clifton called to confirm plans as if everything were normal, because for him everything was. I said, "Yes, of course. We'll do it at my place. I'll make the sweet potato casserole you always liked." I sat across the table from Darlene and passed her the bread and asked about her work and listened to her talk, and I kept my face very still. Clifton looked happy. He laughed at his own story about something that happened at the office. He had no idea. I thought about what the mail carrier had said. They use a key, the ease of it, the familiarity, the knowledge that I would be gone. After they left, I stood in my kitchen and washed dishes and cried for a while. Not for myself, exactly. For the version of my son I'd believed in longer than the evidence warranted. For the dinners I'd planned around his schedule, the calls I'd made on his birthday when he didn't call on mine, the way I'd explained away every small disappointment, because I didn't want to be the kind of mother who kept score. I had not confronted him. But I had by then done something better. On the second and third Thursdays after I installed the cameras, I returned to my side street and watched again. the same two women. On the third visit, I caught something I hadn't captured before. The other woman, the one with the leather bag, took photographs of documents from my lockbox. I saw the flash of a phone camera, small and clear on the recording. I had 3 solid recordings. I had 14 months of financial records with transactions annotated and highlighted by Rosalind's paralegal eye. I had a timeline, a bank account number, and enough to take to the authorities. I met with a detective named Obie Cargrove at the County Financial Crimes Unit. He was methodical and unhurried, and he reviewed everything without making me feel foolish. He told me this type of theft, slow, consistent, targeted at secondary accounts, was more common than most people knew. He told me the photographs of the documents concerned him separately because it suggested potential identity theft preparation. "The woman with your daughter-in-law," he said. "Do you know her?" "No, we'll find out," he said. Her name turned out to be Stacy Briel. She worked as a bookkeeper at a company that had recently let her go. She and Darlene had gone to college together, which I did not know. She had 2 prior complaints against her for financial misconduct, neither of which had resulted in charges. The investigation moved at its own pace. I was not asked to do anything except preserve my records and not alert Clifton or Darlene. Those 3 months were the longest of my life. I cooked Christmas dinner. I bought presents. I watched Darlene open the silk scarf I'd wrapped for her and say how lovely it was, and I smiled. Clifton knew nothing. That, at least, became clear as the investigation developed. He'd had no part in it. He was, in his own way, a casualty of his wife's choices, though that is a complicated grace to extend to someone who had been distant and careless with you for years. When the detective called to tell me they were ready to move forward, it was a Thursday. My literacy center day. I went to my class anyway. The charges were filed on a Tuesday in late February. Darlene was charged with theft by deception, financial exploitation of an elderly person, and unauthorized use of access credentials. Stacy Briel was charged with the same, plus additional counts related to prior conduct the investigation had uncovered. Both pleaded not guilty. Both hired attorneys. Clifton called me that evening. He was crying. I don't remember the last time I heard him cry. Maybe at Bernard's funeral, briefly, in the parking lot where he thought I couldn't see him. "Mom," he said. "Mom, I didn't know. I swear to you I didn't know." "I believe you," I said, "because I did." That, too, was its own complicated thing. The case took 8 months to resolve. Darlene accepted a plea agreement. Stacy Briel went to trial and was convicted. Between restitution orders, legal fees, and the terms of the plea, the financial damage they'd caused me was addressed, though money coming back to you always feels different from money that was never taken. What they had taken, really, and what no restitution covered, was the particular piece of living alone in your own home and trusting it. The feeling of closing your door at night and knowing that what's inside belongs to you, that took longer to come back. I changed my locks. I moved the ceramic rooster. I let myself be angry for a while, privately, in the way older women are sometimes not permitted to be angry because it makes people uncomfortable. Clifton and I are rebuilding something. I don't know yet what it will look like when it's finished. He comes for dinner on Sundays now, alone. We talk more carefully than we used to, which is not the same as talking more honestly, but it is a start. Last month he fixed the back gate that had been sticking since September. He didn't make a production of it. He just fixed it. I still volunteer at the Literacy Center on Thursdays. I still park in the same spot when I leave, and I still have the camera app on my phone, though I rarely open it anymore. Rosalind and I walk every Tuesday morning, the long loop through the park that takes 45 minutes when we're talking, and over an hour when we're really talking. I am 71 years old and I live alone, and some people, I've come to understand, will look at that and see a soft place to press. What they don't see, what I didn't fully see myself, until a young mail carrier stopped at my door with a stack of envelopes and a careful look on his face, is that the years teach you something. They teach you how to be patient, how to be quiet, how to wait until you have what you need. They teach you not to move too soon.